Woke up to an alien woman cooking in my kitchen, and she called me for break fast. Unexpected morning, Jackson Torres had always been a light sleeper, a trait that served him well during his college years but proved inconvenient. In his current downtown apartment where sirens and street noise were constant companions. So when the soft clatter of dishes drifted from his kitchen at 6 in the morning, his eyes snapped open immediately. The scent hit him next. Something like cinnamon mixed with ozone, sweet yet electric. He'd fallen asleep over his latest design project again, his laptop warm against his chest where he'd been sprawled across his couch. The breakup with Emma 3 months ago had left him with insomnia and a tendency to work until exhaustion claimed him wherever he sat. Barefoot and wearing yesterday's wrinkled shirt, Jackson padded toward the kitchen, assuming his upstairs neighbor, Mrs. Chen, was having plumbing issues again. The gentle humming stopped him cold. It wasn't coming from above. It was coming from his kitchen. He pressed himself against the wall, heart hammering. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, unlike anything he'd ever heard, with harmonics that seemed to resonate in his bones. Taking a deep breath, he peered around the corner. A woman stood at his stove, her back to him, stirring something in his favorite pan. But this wasn't just any woman. She was tall, easily 6.5 feet, with skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light like moonbeams trapped beneath pearl. Her hair flowed like liquid silver down her back, and she wore what appeared to be a form-fitting bodysuit that pulsed with soft bioluminescent patterns. "What the hell?" Jackson whispered. She turned, and he nearly collapsed. Her face was undeniably beautiful but otherworldly, with features that were almost human, but refined to an impossible degree. Her eyes were the color of deep space, dark blue-black, with tiny points of light that sparkled like distant stars. When she smiled, it was radiant. "Good morning, Jackson Torres," she said, her voice carrying that same musical quality as her humming. "I am Nixaria of the Celestari. I have come to perform the morning bonding ritual with you." Jackson's knees gave out, and he slumped against the doorframe. "This isn't real. I'm dreaming. I'm having a breakdown." Nixaria set down the wooden spoon and approached him, her movements graceful despite her height. "You are experiencing shock. This is normal. I have prepared a nutritional mixture to help with the transition." She gestured toward the stove where something that looked like scrambled eggs but glowed faintly was waiting. "You're in my apartment," Jackson managed. "Cooking, in my kitchen?" "Yes," she nodded seriously. "According to your species courtship data, the morning bonding ritual involves the preparation of breakfast in the chosen mate's dwelling. I have been studying your preferences through your digital consumption patterns." "My what now?" "Your streaming history, social media interactions, and grocery purchases. You prefer protein-rich morning meals and caffeinated beverages. I have attempted to recreate what your people call the perfect breakfast, using ingredients available on your world." Jackson stared at her, his mind struggling to process what was happening. "Are you saying you're an alien who broke into my apartment to cook me breakfast because you think we're supposed to be together?" Nixaria's luminescent patterns brightened. "Yes. Though I did not break in. I transported directly through your wall. The bonding ritual has officially begun." Lost in translation, Jackson found himself sitting at his own kitchen table, watching an otherworldly being serve him glowing eggs while his coffee maker, somehow reprogrammed to brew something that smelled like vanilla and starlight, gurgled in the background. The surreal nature of the situation was beginning to settle into a strange sort of acceptance. "So, let me get this straight," he said, taking a cautious bite of the eggs. They tasted surprisingly good, like regular eggs, but with a subtle sweetness that made his taste buds tingle. "Your people choose mates by stalking their internet history?" Nixaria settled gracefully into the chair across from him, her luminescent patterns shifting to softer hues. "Not stalking. analyzing compatibility through behavioral data streams. Your species broadcasts an extraordinary amount of personal information through your digital networks. That's definitely stalking. Among the Celestari, mate selection is conducted through careful observation and evaluation. When our long-range scouts detected your world's radio transmissions, we began studying human courtship patterns. She paused, her star-filled eyes growing thoughtful. Your species is complicated. Jackson nearly choked on his coffee. We're complicated? Most sentient races select mates based on genetic compatibility and resource potential. Humans appear to prioritize emotional resonance, physical attraction, and something called chemistry that has nothing to do with actual chemical compounds. Despite everything, Jackson found himself smiling. Yeah, we're weird that way. Nixaria leaned forward, her expression intensely curious. Tell me about heartbreak. The question caught him off guard. What? Your digital patterns show significant behavioral changes following the termination of your pair bond with Emma Caldwell. Decreased social interaction, increased work productivity, altered sleep cycles. But there are no physical injuries. How does emotional damage manifest physiologically? Jackson set down his cup, studying her face. For all her ethereal beauty and otherworldly presence, there was something almost childlike in her curiosity. It's hard to explain. It's like losing a part of yourself. Everything feels heavier, colors seem duller, food tastes like nothing. But you recover. Eventually, usually. He found himself opening up despite the bizarre circumstances. With Emma, I thought we had something real. Turns out she was just killing time until her ex decided he wanted her back. Nixaria's patterns darkened, taking on deeper blues and purples. She caused you pain intentionally? Not intentionally. She just chose someone else. This is incomprehensible. To me. Nixaria reached across the table, her fingers hovering just above his hand. When she finally made contact, a warm electric sensation spread up his arm. Among my people, when a pair bond is formed, it is absolute. There is no choosing another, no abandonment. Sounds lonely, Jackson said softly. Lonely. She tilted her head, the gesture somehow managing to be both alien and endearing. If you don't choose, if there's no risk, then how do you know it's real? For a long moment, they sat in silence, her cool fingers still touching his. Jackson could feel something passing between them. Not quite telepathy, but a sense of her presence in his mind, curious and gentle. Is this what you call chemistry? She asked finally. Jackson's breath caught. The connection he felt with her was unlike anything he'd experienced, even with Emma. It was as if she could see straight through to his core, past all his defenses and carefully constructed walls. Maybe. I don't know. This is all pretty new. Territory for me, too. I was chosen for this mission because of my adaptability and my ability to form rapid emotional connections. But I did not expect. She trailed off, her patterns shifting to warm golds and soft pinks. Didn't expect what? To feel uncertain. Among the Celestari, uncertainty is considered a weakness. But with you, it feels like possibility. Jackson turned his hand palm up, properly taking hold of hers. Her skin was warm despite its ethereal appearance, and he could feel a faint pulse that seemed to sync with his own heartbeat. Nixaria, he said, testing her name on his tongue. What happens if your people find out you're here? Her patterns darkened again, this time with what looked like fear. They expect a full report on human mating customs within one solar cycle. If they discover I have formed an unauthorized emotional attachment, what would they do? She met his eyes, and he saw something there that made his chest tighten. Vulnerability, fear, and underneath it all, a fierce determination that reminded, Him exactly why he'd found himself drawn to strong women in the first place. They would terminate the mission, and me along with it. Hearts across the stars. The gravity of Nyxaria's confession hung between them like a charged field. Jackson felt something shift inside his chest, a protective instinct he hadn't experienced since Emma had made him feel like her feelings were something he needed to earn rather than something freely given. "How long do we have?" he asked, still holding her hand. 17 of your days until the next communication window opens." Her patterns had settled into a soft, steady amber glow. "I was instructed to observe from a distance, but your emotional resonance patterns were so complex, so layered with creativity and pain and hope. I had to understand." Jackson stood, gently pulling her up with him. "Then let's not waste time sitting in my kitchen talking about alien bureaucracy." Over the next few hours, something extraordinary happened. Nyxaria proved to be endlessly curious about human creativity, watching in fascination as Jackson showed her his design work. She traced the lines of his digital paintings with reverent fingers, her patterns brightening with each new piece. "This one," she said, stopping at a painting he'd done during his darkest period after Emma left. A swirling galaxy of deep blues and purples shot through with silver light. "This speaks of longing." "I was trying to paint what emptiness felt like," Jackson admitted. "You painted my homeworld," she whispered. "The Celestari Nebula looks exactly like this." The realization sent a shiver through both of them. Without conscious thought, Jackson found himself standing behind her, his arms circling her waist as they looked at the painting together. She fit against him perfectly despite their height difference, her head resting against his shoulder. "Maybe we were connected long before you came here," he murmured against her ear. She turned in his arms, her star-filled eyes searching his face. "Jackson, I need you to understand something. What I'm feeling. It's not part of the mission. It's not Celestari programming or biological imperative. It's scary as hell? Terrifying," she agreed, and then she was kissing him. The moment their lips met, the world exploded into sensation. Her kiss was electric, literally. Tiny sparks of bioluminescent energy danced between them, and Jackson could taste starlight on her tongue. But more than the alien sensation was the emotion behind it, desperate and tender and utterly human in its vulnerability. When they broke apart, both breathless, Nyxaria's entire body was glowing soft gold. "Is that normal?" Jackson asked, running his fingers along her luminescent cheek. "No," she said, wonder in her voice. "I've never glowed gold before. Only my people's. Life mates are supposed to—" She stopped, eyes widening. "Life mates?" "The rarest form of Celestari pair bonding. It happens perhaps once in 1,000 generations. The partner's life forces become intertwined, their very beings synchronized." Her patterns were shifting rapidly now, cycling through colors he'd never seen before. "But I'm not fully Celestari anymore, am I? Being here, feeling this, it's changing me." Jackson cupped her face in his hands, marveling at the warmth of her skin. "Is that bad?" "I don't know. My people value stability, predictability. What we have, this chaos of emotion and choice and risk, it goes against everything I was taught." "But how does it feel?" A slow smile spread across her face, and her glow intensified. "Like being alive for the first time." They spent the afternoon on his couch, her head in his lap as he sketched her profile. She told him stories of her world, vast, cities of crystal and light, beings who lived for centuries but had forgotten how to truly feel. A society so focused on perfection they'd lost touch with passion. "We don't create art," she said, watching his pencil move across the paper. "We consider it inefficient. But watching you, there's something beautiful about making something from nothing, something that serves no practical purpose except to express what's inside you." "Like this," Jackson said, showing her the sketch. He'd captured not just her features, but the play of light across her skin, the way her patterns seemed to dance with her emotions. Nixaria sat up, studying the drawing with reverent fingers. "You've made me more beautiful than I am." "I drew what I see." She looked at him then with such intensity that he felt it in his bones. "On my world, I was considered emotionally deficient. Too curious, too questioning. They sent me on this mission hoping distance would cure me of my irregularities. And instead I found someone who sees irregularities as beautiful." As evening fell, they found themselves tangled together on his bed, not making love but simply exploring the miracle of connection. Jackson traced the patterns of her bioluminescence while she ran her fingers through his hair, both of them marveling at how perfectly they seemed to fit together despite being from different worlds. 17 days, Nixaria whispered against his chest. 17 days, he agreed, pulling her closer. "We'll figure something out." But even as he said it, Jackson wondered how you fight for love when the opposition controls technology beyond human comprehension. How do you convince an alien civilization to let you keep the woman who'd become your entire universe in the span of a single day? Outside his window, the stars seemed brighter than usual, and for the first time in his life, Jackson found himself wishing on something other than his own determination. He was wishing on love itself. Recall on the 14th day, Jackson woke to find Nixaria standing motionless by his bedroom window, her patterns cycling through rapid, agitated colors he'd never seen before, deep crimsons mixed with stark whites, like warning signals. "They're coming," she said without turning around. "I can feel the ship's approach through the quantum field." Jackson sat up, instantly alert. Over the past 2 weeks, they'd fallen into a rhythm that felt more natural than any relationship he'd ever had. Mornings painting together in the golden light streaming through his windows, afternoons exploring the city as Nixaria marveled at human chaos and creativity, evenings curled together sharing stories from their vastly different worlds. How long do we have? Hours, maybe less. She finally turned, and Jackson's heart clenched at the anguish in her star-filled eyes. Commander Thale is leading the retrieval personally. He's not understanding when it comes to emotional attachments. Then we run. Where? Her laugh was bitter. They can track me anywhere on this planet. My biosignature is too distinct. Jackson stood, pulling on clothes with sharp, decisive movements. Then we don't run, we make them understand. Jackson, you don't know what you're suggesting. The Celestari view emotional bonds as weakness, as contamination of pure logic. They won't see what we have as beautiful. They'll see it as a disease that needs to be cured. Then we change their minds. Before Nixaria could respond, the air in the apartment began to shimmer. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in seconds, and a sound like crystal bells filled the room. 3 figures materialized in the living room, tall, luminescent beings similar to Nixaria, but somehow colder, their patterns locked in rigid geometric configurations. The central figure, presumably Commander Thale, spoke in a voice like winter wind. "Nixaria of the 5th Resonance, you have exceeded your mission parameters." Nixaria stepped forward, positioning herself between Jackson and the Celestari. "Commander Thale, I have been conducting thorough research into human emotional bonds as instructed. Research does not require personal involvement." Thale's gaze shifted to Jackson, and Jackson felt as though he were being dissected at the molecular level. "You have contaminated yourself with primitive emotional responses. The corruption is evident in your pattern distortion." "It's not corruption," Jackson found himself saying, stepping up beside Nixaria. "It's growth." The temperature in the room plummeted further. All 3 Celestari fixed their attention on him, and Jackson fought the urge to step back. Instead, he reached for Nixaria's hand, and her patterns immediately shifted to warm golds and soft blues. "Observe," said one of the other Celestari, pointing at their joined hands. "The contamination spreads through physical contact." "That's not contamination," Jackson said, his voice growing stronger. "That's synchronization. That's two beings choosing to become more than the sum of their parts. Commander Thale's patterns flickered, the first sign of any emotional response. Human, you understand nothing of our ways. Nyxaria was chosen for this mission due to her genetic stability and intellectual capacity. You have reduced her to a creature of base impulses. Have I? Jackson looked at Nyxaria, seeing the woman who'd spent hours analyzing the mathematical beauty in his paintings, who'd helped him redesign his entire portfolio with insights no human mind could have conceived. Tell them what you've discovered about human creativity. Nyxaria straightened, her scientific training overriding her fear. Commander, human emotional bonds don't just provide companionship. They enhance cognitive function. The stress of positive emotional connection actually increases neural plasticity and creative problem-solving capacity by 47%. Irrelevant, Thale said. But Jackson caught the slight pause before he spoke. Is it? Nyxaria pressed. Our people have reached technological perfection. But when did we last create something new? When did we last solve a problem through inspiration, rather than computation? You speak of chaos as though it were beneficial. I speak of growth, Nyxaria replied, her patterns brightening. Look at what we've built together. She gestured toward the walls where Jackson's latest paintings hung, collaborative pieces that blended his human artistic vision with her understanding of quantum mechanics and light manipulation. They were unlike anything either of them could have created alone. One of the other Celestari moved closer to examine the artwork, his rigid patterns showing the first signs of fluctuation. The mathematical principles underlying these compositions are elegant. They're more than elegant, Jackson said. They're alive. They exist because two different minds chose to create something together, something that required both logic and intuition, both structure and chaos. Commander Thale was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a note of uncertainty. Even if we accept that your bond has produced something of value, Nyxaria's mission is complete. She will return with us for debriefing and reassignment. No. The word came from Jackson with more force than he'd intended. She won't. You would challenge the Celestari fleet. I would challenge anyone who tries to separate us. Jackson stepped forward, still holding Nyxaria's hand. You want to study human emotion? Here it is. I love her. Not because she's useful to me, not because she fulfills some biological need, but because she makes me want to be better than I am. She makes me believe in possibilities I never imagined. Nyxaria's patterns exploded into brilliant gold, and something extraordinary happened. The light from her skin began to pulse in rhythm with Jackson's heartbeat, and for a moment, all 5 beings in the room could feel it. The pure, transformative power of love, freely given and received. This is what you call weakness? Jackson asked. This connection that makes us both stronger, both more creative, both more alive. Commander Thale's patterns were cycling rapidly now, showing the first real emotion Jackson had seen from any of the Celestari. The Council will not approve of this development. Then maybe it's time your council learned something new, Nyxaria said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her luminescent cheeks. Dawn of understanding. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire, the air thick with possibility and danger. Commander Thale's patterns continued their agitated cycling, while his companions examined Jackson's artwork with growing fascination. Finally, Thale spoke. Nyxaria, you present us with an impossible choice. Return with us and abandon this connection, or force us to report your defection to the High Council. There's a third option, Jackson said, his heart hammering but his voice steady. Let her stay as an ambassador, a bridge between our species. Impossible. The Council values stability above all else. But do they value knowledge? Nyxaria stepped forward, her scientific training taking over. Commander, what if I told you that human emotional bonds don't just enhance individual creativity, They might hold the key to solving our people's greatest challenge. Thales' patterns stilled. Explain. Our birth rates have been declining for millennia. Our people live longer but create less, feel less, connect less. We're dying by degrees, becoming more perfect and more sterile with each generation. Nyxaria's voice gained strength as she continued. But humans, they choose their connections, they risk their hearts, and they create new life not just biologically, but emotionally, artistically, spiritually. They grow. The Celestari who'd been studying Jackson's paintings turned back to the group. Her biosignature has indeed changed. She's exhibiting new neural pathways, enhanced creative capacity, and emotional range patterns we've never recorded before. Evolution, Jackson said quietly. That's what love does. It doesn't make you perfect. It makes you more yourself than you ever thought possible. Commander Thale was quiet for so long that Jackson began to fear the worst. Then, slowly, his rigid patterns began to shift, showing the first signs of genuine curiosity rather than military efficiency. You would truly choose to remain here? To abandon your homeworld, your people, your future among the stars? Nyxaria looked at Jackson, and her smile was radiant. I'm not abandoning my people. I'm helping them evolve. And as for the stars, she gestured toward the window where dawn was breaking over the city. I've found something brighter. The Council will demand evidence that this connection serves a purpose beyond personal gratification. Then we'll give them evidence, Jackson said. Document everything. Study us. Learn from what we've discovered together. You would submit to Celestari observation? If it means she can stay, if it means our people can learn from each other, yes. Commander Thale's patterns settled into something that might have been resignation mixed with hope. Very well. Nyxaria, you will remain on Earth as a cultural liaison. Your mission is expanded to include long-term study of human emotional bonds and their applications to Celestari society. The relief that flooded through Jackson nearly buckled his knees. Nyxaria's patterns exploded into brilliant gold and silver, her joy so radiant that even the other Celestari began to show brighter colors. However, Thale continued, this arrangement is provisional. You will submit regular reports, and if the Council determines that your condition is detrimental rather than beneficial, you will be recalled immediately. Understood, Nyxaria said, though her patterns showed she was hardly listening. Her attention was entirely focused on Jackson, and the love he saw in her eyes made his chest feel too small to contain his heart. The three Celestari began to shimmer, preparing to depart. As they faded, Commander Thale's voice carried one final message. Nyxaria, do not disappoint us. I won't, she replied, but she was looking at Jackson. When she said it, the apartment felt impossibly quiet after they left. Jackson and Nyxaria stood in the middle of his living room, holding hands and barely daring to believe what had just happened. So, Jackson said finally, that happened. That happened, she agreed, then launched herself into his arms with a laugh. That sounded like music. They held each other for a long time, swaying slightly in the morning light streaming through the windows. When they finally pulled apart, Nyxaria's patterns had settled into steady gold shot through with soft blues. Colors Jackson had learned meant deep contentment mixed with anticipation. What happens now? He asked. Now we prove them right, she said, tracing the line of his jaw with gentle fingers. We show them that love doesn't make you weaker, it makes you infinite. 3 months later, Jackson woke to the familiar sound of Nyxaria humming in the kitchen. But this time, there was no shock, no disbelief, only the deep satisfaction of a man who'd found his perfect morning ritual. He found her at the stove, her hair caught up in a messy bun, wearing his old Columbia t-shirt and carefully monitoring what appeared to be perfectly normal scrambled eggs. She'd gotten remarkably good at human cooking, though she still insisted on adding trace amounts of exotic minerals that made everything taste faintly of starlight. "Good morning, beautiful," he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Good. Morning, my heart," she replied, leaning back against him. "I've been thinking about our report to the council." "Oh? I want to tell them about yesterday, about how you held Mrs. Chen's hand while she cried about her husband, and how your kindness made her smile for the first time since his funeral." "That's not exactly groundbreaking research, isn't it?" She turned in his arms, her eyes bright with discovery. "You took on her pain not because you had to, not because it served any logical purpose, but because her suffering hurt you to witness. That's not weakness. That's the most sophisticated form of intelligence I've ever encountered." Jackson kissed her forehead, marveling as always at the way her patterns brightened at his touch. "And what will you tell them about us?" "That we're not just two beings who chose each other," she said, her voice soft with wonder. "We're proof that the universe tends toward connection, toward love, toward the kind of growth that can only happen when you risk everything for someone else." "That's very poetic for a scientific report." "That's very human for a Celestari," she countered with a grin. As they ate breakfast together, their breakfast in their kitchen, in their life they'd built from impossible circumstances and stubborn hope. Jackson reflected on how completely his world had changed. He'd gone from a man convinced that love was just elaborate self-deception to someone who understood that love was the most real thing in the universe. "Nixaria," he said, reaching across the table for her hand. "Yes?" "I'm glad you came for breakfast." Her laugh was pure starlight, and her patterns danced with joy. "So am I, my love. So am I." Outside their window, the city was waking up, millions of humans starting their days with the same hopes and fears and desperate need for connection that had brought an alien woman to his kitchen on that impossible morning. And somewhere among the stars, an ancient civilization was beginning to learn that the secret to evolution wasn't perfection. It was the courage to let yourself be changed by love.